Before we get started, I'm going to say trigger warning. There's a lot of abuse of children and details and that types of things in this video. It was alleged, and some of it has been confirmed, and this also involves Freedom of Information Act request, FBI wiretaps, and there was even a song written about it. So, Satanists in high places exposed in Minnesota. 200 people attended a meeting in St. Paul, Minnesota on February 2nd, titled The Franklin Cover-Up, Child Abuse, Satanism, and Murder in Nebraska. The forum was organized by the Schiller Institute and addressed by Institute representatives Philip Valentini, Nebraska Attorney John DeCamp, Louis DuPont Smith, and heir to the DuPont chemical fortune and associate of Lyndon LaRouche, and Jack Graham, County Attorney of Crow Wing, Minnesota. In his opening remarks, which we publish here, slightly abridged, Valentini cites a special report that he authored for a New Federalist newspaper, Skip Humphrey and the Criminal Abuse of Power. Portions of that report were published in the EIR October 29, 1993. An updated second edition has since been released and is available from the New Federalist, P.O. Box 889, Leesburg, Virginia 22075. And this was originally published in EIR Volume 21, Number 10, March 4th, 1994. Let me explain why we're in Minnesota. In 1992, Louis DuPont Smith and his wife, Andrea, were the targets of a kidnapping conspiracy. This conspiracy was financed by Smith's father, working with private groups that were longtime political enemies of Lyndon LaRouche and were determined to destroy his political movement. The Anti-Defamation League of B'nai B'rith and the Cult Awareness Network. Now, the Anti-Defamation League has a reputation as some sort of civil rights organization, but since its office was raided by San Francisco police on April 8, 1993, they came up with massive evidence that this ADL runs a national spy network with intimate relations with various law enforcement agencies. In fact, they have functioned as a private arm of the FBI when the FBI was prohibited from carrying out its COINTELPRO dirty tricks, spying, keeping enemies lists on private citizens. These groups were planning a kidnapping. As well, Lewis will explain, one of the former deputy sheriffs in Virginia whom they tried to recruit to this conspiracy was an honest cop who went on to the FBI and told him about it. They put the FBI on spot. They had informed Louis and Andrea about this, and they put wiretaps on the phones of the conspirators. They put recording devices on one agent they had in the ranks of the conspirators, and the group was arrested before they could carry out the kidnapping. Humphrey targets LaRouche and Associates. During the trial, which was September, October, and November of 1992, they released wiretaps, transcripts, and tapes. Among the tapes was a lengthy discussion between Rick Munson, an investigator in Minnesota Attorney General Hubert Skip Humphrey's office, and Don Moore, a disgraced cop from Virginia, the ringleader of this kidnapping conspiracy. Although on the wiretap transcript that we have, they didn't discuss kidnapping directly, it is clear that they were discussing a national political conspiracy, launching a coordinated political attack against LaRouche movement through the country, with Humphrey's office collaborating intimately with Don Moore and the Anti-Defamation League and the Cult Awareness Network in launching a political attack, including indictments on false charges and planting negative stories in the press. The closing comments, of Rick Munson to Don Moore was, "We really want these guys. We really want to get these guys." This would fit in perfectly with the kidnapping plans to have some big blow-up, negative stories in the press, arrests of LaRouche supporters. Cover for the kidnapping was planned to occur around September 1992. Now, this is something new with Skip Humphrey. Is it? It is not. As far as the political prostitution for his office goes, using his office to destroy his political opponents, political enemies, or the enemies of the people who control or finance him. I have here a letter dated 26 August 1986, signed by Hubert H. Humphrey III on stationery of the Attorney General of Minnesota. A letter sent out to thousands of members of the Democratic Farmer-Laborer Party, the congressional district, which was then represented by Bill Frenzel. The letter says, "Dear DFLer, I enthusiastically support Ray Stock in his bid to upset Bill Frenzel. Ray has a big task ahead of him and needs your help. First, he must defeat a LaRouche disciple in the primary and then take on the entrenched Bill Frenzel. Ray needs you to vote in the primary. We must show the nation that Minnesota will not tolerate the LaRouche fringe. Ray intends to see what happens in Illinois does not happen here." What happened in Illinois in 1986 was that two LaRouche supporters, fair and square, won the Democratic primary for Lieutenant Governor and Secretary of State. There's nothing wrong with Skip Humphrey having a political opinion, but when you put that on the stationery of the Attorney General of Minnesota and mail this out, that says something else again. Destroying that political movement becomes the policy of the Attorney General's office, which is supposed to be objectively involved in enforcing the law. What followed was Hubert Humphrey throwing out any DFL members who were supporters of Lyndon LaRouche. Kick him out. Call the police. Candidates were kicked out of meetings. The police were called on gubernatorial candidate Andy Olson. We have a gentleman here tonight, Richard Van Bergen, who has announced his candidacy for the DFL nomination for governor this year, who won the DFL nomination for state legislator in his district in 1988. A LaRouche supporter, a Democrat, in 1990, he was elected as a delegate to a district convention. He was kicked out solely because he supported LaRouche, despite the fact that Democrats in the convention had elected him. In 1992, the same thing happened, even though Jack Graham, Crow Wing County attorney, came down to defend him. They kicked him out, anyway, on orders of Humphrey. So he came to Minnesota last June to explain the story of this kidnapping conspiracy, and other people began coming forward with other examples of similar atrocities by Hubert Humphrey's office. This was not just a Minnesota issue, because Humphrey is now the president of the National Association of Attorneys General. He is in a position to coordinate and spread his position nationally. This is of concern to everybody in the United States, not just the people in Minnesota. Hubert Humphrey's abuse of power. Here is a flyer that some of you may have heard about from the Red Lion Disposal Company. We'll handle all your hazardous waste disposal problems. Fast, friendly, experienced, dependable. This was mailed out to 571 businesses in the Twin Cities back in 1992, offering very cheap disposal of hazardous waste. The two little companies called All Fire Test in Minneapolis and Pioneer Custom Cabinets in St. Paul. All Fire Test had a barrel of old paint wastes they'd had for years. Maybe this was an opportunity to get rid of it. The haulers come in, people dressed like trashmen come in a truck, look at the owner of the company and say, "Attorney General's office, you're under arrest for hauling hazardous waste without a license." They drag him off to jail, strip, search, and fingerprint. What's this about? A Gestapo raid. Hands up, you're coming with us. Simultaneous raids against the little company in St. Paul. 2 weeks later, the phone starts lighting up with calls from the press. How do you respond to what Attorney General Humphrey said today? What did he say? He went on television to say your firm is a disreputable company, violating the hazardous waste laws. 12 employees denounced on television by Humphrey. People lost their life savings and trying to defend themselves. In May 1993, Judge Monahan of St. Paul threw it out as unconstitutional entrapment by Humphrey's office. The crime was created by Humphrey's office to aggrandize Humphrey and to justify further funding of his little Gestapo operation, which he called E-Team, the Environmental Gestapo. That case document is in our report. You have the case of Jack Graham, Crow Wing County attorney, independent-minded. Can't tolerate that in Minnesota. especially with the sex abuse cases and other crimes going on. If you have somebody independent in law enforcement, they might try to clean it up. Who knows where that could lead? What high-level people are implicated? Jack Graham had the courage and integrity to look at the case of Lyndon LaRouche and realize that it was a political frame-up to write President Clinton demanding that LaRouche be freed. That kind of independent thinking is evidently not tolerated in Humphreys, Minnesota. Humphrey muscled into Crow Wing County and took over 2 local child abuse cases on totally fraudulent grounds. 2 people who all the evidence showed were innocent were charged with these crimes. Humphrey wanted a propaganda cover to try and drive Jack Graham out of office, to get petitions to recall him. The petitions were thrown out by the Supreme Court because they didn't specify any crime. Now Jack Graham is on the offense against Humphrey. And I've invited him to address our rally on February 24th. The rally will be in a coalition effort. You don't have to be a Lyndon LaRouche supporter there. You just have to know the truth about Humphrey and what he's done. Now gets to the interesting part. Again, trigger warning. Jordan, Minnesota is known for this. The Jordan abuse case. But the most atrocious case that we researched was the Jordan child abuse case. Many people today in Minnesota still think of that case. In 1983 through 85 was a hoax. That prosecutor, Kathleen Morris, was a hysterical woman, overzealous, going after people who were innocent and concocting charges, and that was all made up. But there is evidence of a massive child abuse, sexual abuse of children in Jordan, Minnesota. The Minneapolis Star-Tribune interviewed Morris in February 1985 and asked, "Why are you so concerned about this? Did you have a personal experience with sexual abuse?" "No," she said. "It's simply a matter of having seen what sex abuse can do to kids. One of the victims in the current cases, for example, had her genital and rectal organs so badly damaged that she couldn't control either urination or defecation. She often smells. She'll be that way for years and years, maybe the rest of her life. I've had kids tell me they'd rather be dead." Minneapolis Star-Tribune, October 21st, 1984. The doctors examined the children and found evidence of sexual abuse is overwhelming and irrefutable. Jack Erskine, one of Humphrey's collaborators in the cover-up, along with Norm Coleman, tried to dismiss the evidence of child abuse, saying only 16 to 19 children were sexually abused in Jordan. Emphasis added. That's a quote from the Star-Tribune. From Jack Erskine, only 16 to 19, not 40, were sexually abused. The case documented in the New Federalist, Humphrey reported. The case is documented. How Kathleen Morris was lied to by Humphrey. "Just let me handle it. Get your personality out of this. I'll take care of it. I'll make sure the kids are put in foster homes. I'll make sure that later on we pursue criminal charges." One of the foster homes that they put kids in was a guy by the name of Hennon from Jordan, and he continued to abuse those kids. We'll pull that up here shortly. Okay. And we also got the attorney that took over for Kathleen Morris after they trumped up stuff against her. And his name is James Torito. Lying. Kathleen Morris will tell you that to this day. That was my big mistake, believing Humphrey, because what he did with the help of the FBI was simply to cover up the case. Was that case just local? Prior to this, Belle Plaine had similar issues, and that's just 7 miles down the road. You'll see in the Humphrey report a reprint of the front page of the Nabala Bulletin, January through February 1985. That's the North American Man-Boy Love Association, or NAMBLA. Yeah, they now have an official position at the United Nations and as a non-governmental organization. And there's some controversy over that. It's a group that advocates legalized sex between adults and children. Their slogan is "Sex Before 8, or else it's too late." They're involved in organizing pedophilia internationally, mostly based in Holland. NAMBLA was founded by David Thordstad of Minnesota. And then there's Phil Wilkie, who's on the national board of NAMBLA. He's a prominent gay rights activist in the Twin Cities, one of the grandsons of Wendell Wilkie. The NAMBLA Bulletin wrote, "Our Kathleen Morris, Witchfinder General of Minnesota, calls it quits. Parents organize in defense of abuse of power by the state." The North American Man-Boy Love Association celebrated the fact that Humphrey took over the case. NAMBLA at the time was part of the Human Rights Campaign Fund of Stephen Eden of Minnesota, the homosexual political lobby, and endorsed by Mondale's campaign for president in 1984. The Nebraska connection. What's a connection to Nebraska? Some years later, John DeCamp wrote in his book, The Franklin Cover-Up, Child Abuse, Satanism, and Murder in Nebraska, Lincoln, Nebraska, Nebraska, AWT, Inc., 1992. In the appendix, there's an interview with Paul Bonacci, one of the former child victims of the prostitution pedophile ring that was uncovered in Nebraska, who is now one of John DeCamp's clients. Bonacci, in prison, independently testifies that he was brought to Jordan, Minnesota to be sexually abused in Valley Green Trailer Park, naming several of the same people Kathleen Morris had charged, whom Humphrey had protected. He independently corroborated everything that Morris had said. Further investigation has shed a new important light on the case of Jacob Wetterling, who at age 11 was kidnapped at gunpoint in 1989 from his home near St. Joseph, Minnesota, as John DeCamp will explain. Okay, I used to live in Valley Green, okay? I tried to get them to fix some stuff about Valley Green, and the city refused. Okay, we're going to go over to Toledo. Okay, let's see if I can get this up a little bit better, because it's not fully there. Okay. Go to the picture, and then I can zoom it in. Okay, top leader, Scott County Attorney James Torito, was elected president of the Metro County Attorneys Association for 1990. Elected unanimously by county attorneys from Anoka, Carver, Dakota, Hennepin, Ramsey, Washington, Scott, and St. Louis counties. Torito, 32, is the youngest president to serve the association. Outgoing President Robert Johnson, not related to me, Anoka County Attorney, passed the chairman's gavel to Torito. Ramsey County Attorney Tom Foley praised Torito for his expertise in the legislative arena. His ideas have not only won him praise among his fellow county attorneys, but within the entire legal community. Foley said Torito's priorities will be implementing a metropolitan drug prosecution team that will work to prosecute drug crimes across the county borders and recommending legislative changes to promote or to prosecute the crimes in a more efficient manner. He's the one that did the tough on crime in Minnesota under Humphrey. Okay. And we're going to go to the actual paper. Okay, county attorney. Candidates cite their management and expertise. It's less than flashy buzzwords as far as campaigns go, but both candidates for Scott County Attorney stress the same skill, management. One candidate, Pat Celebrito, says that the office leadership badly needs improvement. The other candidate, James Torito, who was a county attorney from 1986 to 1994, maintains he has a proven management record. The two survived a three-candidate primary in their quest to fill the seat vacated by Tom Harbinson, who isn't seeking re-election. Ciliberto, who won 47% of the primary vote, boasts endorsements including Scott County Attorneys Association, criticized the office for having too much turnover and too many delays in deciding whether to charge people with crime. He says that he learned about the county's law enforcement issue 11 years ago, through his 11 years as lead prosecutor for the Scott Joint Prosecution Association, prosecuting misdemeanors and gross misdemeanors for crimes in 7 cities in the county. Ciliberto has said some of the cases in Scott County's attorney's office remain open for months before deciding whether or not charges should be made. That's not acceptable. Whatever the reason is, it's not good enough. It's got to change, said Ciliberto, 55, of Shakopee. He also said he would try to change the work environment to keep employees on board longer and lessen the continual restraining that result from high turnover. Turwido, who won 34% of the primary vote, cited his experience in making the office more professional when he took over in 1986 on the heels of Kathleen Morris, who was accused of mishandling child sex abuse cases. During his 8 years at the helm, Turwido brought in an office manager for spending and employees matters that created the Office of Victims Witness Coordinator to help crime victims and help create curfew laws, he said. Anybody can be tough prosecuting crimes, said Turwido, 44, of Jordan. The issue is, what are you going to do to prevent crime in your community? You see what types of cases are going on. He said he kept the promise he'd made when he was elected to serve only 2 terms and didn't seek re-election in 1994. He's been working in private practice since then, handling an array of work, including civil cases, some criminal defense. Because Scott County is the fastest growing county in the northern half of the United States and the 12th fastest growing in the nation, more crimes and a need for a larger staff in lean economic times will likely be an issue for whoever wins. This was in 2002 when James was seeking re-election. But you see, he took over for Morris, and that's what it states in there. So that gets a little interesting. He's also counsel for the Knights of Columbus. And then I'm going to go over here. Yeah, we're going to look up Hennon Jordan abuse. Okay, I'm not sure if I can extend this out. Hopefully, no. So I'll just read it for you. 2 decades old case lands Jordan sex offender back behind bars. A Jordan area man who previously served time for sexually abusing foster children he cared for will spend at least an additional 8 years behind bars, pleading guilty to a new charge filed late in December of 2014 after a woman told authorities she was sexually abused by him more than 20 years ago when she was in his foster care. That would be right around the time that, Turwido was the attorney, and he placed kids where? In foster care. David Allen Hennon, 60, pled guilty on April 8th to first-degree criminal sexual conduct involving penetration or contact with a person under the age of 13. He was sentenced June 5th in Scott County District Court to 146 months in prison. Judge Rex D. Stacy ordered Hennon to serve 2/3 of the sentence, 97 and 1/3 months in prison at the State Correctional Facility in St. Cloud. So, yeah, you can read that. I'm going to go down to here. Hennon and his wife, Connie, operated a privately licensed foster care program for several years. In 2002, Dale Hennon was charged with sexually abusing 4 girls who were in his care between 1985, Turwido, Humphrey, right, and 2002. In June 2003, under a plea agreement, Hennon was sentenced to up to 8 years in prison for first-degree criminal sexual conduct against a foster child between April 1996 and April 1997. Judge Mary Thiessen also sentenced Hennon to combined 55 years of probation after he pled guilty. So, yeah, this stuff's real. Okay. We're going to go over, and there's a little song I want to play for you. It is vulgar, but there's a rapper who actually made a song about it. Okay. This is from Big Black is the rapper's name, and it's called Jordan, Minnesota. It's from his Atomizer album. So, we'll continue on with the series about Minnesota corruption later. There's more to talk about.